Ever wondered what it was really like during the European witch hunts? Forget the pointy hats and bubbling cauldrons from storybooks. The reality was a terrifying chapter in history, a period of mass hysteria that swept across Europe for nearly 300 years. It wasn't just a medieval thing, either. This dark era, often called the Burning Times, stretched from the 1400s well into the 1700s, peaking right when the Renaissance and the scientific revolution were supposed to be bringing enlightenment. So, how did this happen? What turned ordinary neighbors into accusers and victims? Let's uncover the dark truth behind one of history's most chilling episodes. To really get it, we need to understand the world people lived in back then. Life was tough, really tough. Famine, plague, and war were constant threats. People had very little control over their lives. When a child fell sick, a cow died, or a hailstorm destroyed the crops, they desperately needed an explanation. In a deeply religious society, where belief in God and the devil was absolute, it was easy to blame supernatural evil. The idea of a witch, someone who made a pact with the devil in exchange for powers to cause harm, or maleficium, provided a simple, albeit terrifying, answer to life's random misfortunes. This belief wasn't new. For centuries, people had believed in magic and curses. But something shifted around the 15th century. Before then, the church was often skeptical, sometimes even punishing people for believing in witchcraft. But as societal anxieties grew, so did the fear of a vast, organized conspiracy of witches working to undermine Christianity. This fear was supercharged by one of the most infamous books ever written, the Malleus Maleficarum, or The Hammer of Witches, published in 1487 by two German churchmen. This book was essentially a witch hunter's handbook. It laid out, in terrifying detail, how to identify, prosecute, and exterminate witches. It claimed that women were more susceptible to a demonic pact because they were supposedly more carnal, impressionable, and weaker in faith. The Malleus Maleficarum was a bestseller, second only to the Bible for a time, spreading like wildfire thanks to the newly invented printing press. It gave official, theological justification for what was about to become a continent-wide panic. It told judges and magistrates that it was their sacred duty to root out this evil, and it gave them the tools to do it. So, who was typically accused of witchcraft? It wasn't the stereotypical green-skinned hag. The targets were often the most vulnerable people in a community. Elderly widows were a common target. They were often poor, dependent on charity, and lived alone, making them easy scapegoats. If they muttered to themselves, people thought they were casting spells. If they knew about herbal remedies, they were accused of making potions. It was a no-win situation, but it wasn't just the elderly. Anyone who was different could be at risk. Midwives were a frequent target. Their work with childbirth was mysterious, and life and death. If a baby died, it was tragically easy to blame the midwife for cursing the child. People with physical disabilities, mental illness, or simply those who were unpopular and had a sharp tongue could find themselves in the crosshairs. Essentially, if you stood out and your neighbor's cow died, you could be in serious trouble. The accusations were often fueled by personal grudges, property disputes, and social tensions. Crying, which was a powerful weapon, once accused, a person had almost no chance of escape. The legal process was designed to secure a confession. The accused were arrested, often on the flimsiest of evidence: a neighbor's gossip, a strange dream, or a simple accusation. They were stripped and searched for the devil's mark, a spot on the body, like a mole or a birthmark, that was believed to be insensitive to pain. Examiners would use a sharp pin to poke the accused all over their body, and if they found a spot that didn't bleed or hurt, often because the pin was dull or retractable, it was seen as proof. If that wasn't enough, there were the ordeals. These were brutal tests designed to prove guilt or innocence. In the ordeal by water, the accused, often bound thumb to toe, would be thrown into a river or lake. Since water was considered pure, it was believed it would reject a witch. So, if you floated, you were a witch and would be executed. If you sank, you were innocent. But you'd probably already drowned. There was no way to win. It was a terrifying system, built on superstition and designed for conviction. The primary goal of any witch trial was to get a confession. And to get that confession, interrogators used a horrifying array of torture methods. Devices like the thumbscrew, the leg-crushing Spanish boot, or the strappado, which involved hoisting a victim into the air by their bound wrists, were used to inflict unimaginable pain. And the interrogators didn't just want a confession, they wanted names. They would torture victims until they named other witches in their supposed coven. This created a chain reaction of accusations. One arrest could lead to dozens more, tearing entire communities apart. It became a feedback loop of fear and accusation, with each confession proving that the conspiracy was real and larger than anyone imagined. People implicated their own friends, neighbors, and even family members, either to stop the pain or because, under torture, they truly came to believe in the fantasy they were forced to confess. The end for most of the convicted was a public and brutal execution. While we often think of witch burnings in Salem, Massachusetts, burning at the stake was actually more common in the Holy Roman Empire, what is now Germany. In other places, like England and its American colonies, hanging was the preferred method. These executions were public spectacles meant to serve as a terrifying warning to others. Tens of thousands of people, scholars estimate between 40,000 and 50,000, were executed during this period. And it's crucial to remember that about 80% of them were women. The witch hunts were, in many ways, a war on women, especially those who didn't fit into the narrow, male-dominated social structure of the time. So, how did it all end? It wasn't a sudden event, but a slow, gradual decline. As the Enlightenment took hold in the 18th century, a new emphasis on reason, evidence, and scientific thought began to challenge the superstitions that had fueled the panic. Judges and officials became more skeptical. They started demanding stricter standards of evidence and questioning the validity of confessions obtained through torture. People began to realize that crop failures could be explained by bad weather and illnesses by natural causes, not by a neighbor's curse. The legal systems that had been so effective at prosecuting witches were slowly dismantled. The last official execution for witchcraft in Europe took place in Switzerland in 1782. While the laws disappeared, the belief in witches and magic lingered for a long time. The witch hunts serve as a chilling reminder of how fear, superstition, and a need for scapegoats can lead to mass hysteria and devastating injustice. It shows us what can happen when we abandon critical thinking and allow fear to dictate our actions. The story of the witch hunts isn't just about the past. It's a timeless warning about the dark side of human nature and the fragility of reason. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more dives into history's most fascinating and unsettling stories. See you next time.